evening tonight, my last meeting tonight. I've just got one little announcement to make to everybody, and it's the standard brief that comes out on the type of meetings. So just for you to be aware, today's meeting is being filmed for live and subsequent broadcast by way of the Council's internet site. The images and sound recording may be used for training purposes within the Council. Generally, the public seating areas are not filmed. However, by entering the room and using the public seating areas, you are considered to be being filmed, and to the possible use of those images and sound recording for webcasting and or training purposes. Members dialing in remotely, please turn on your microphones when you wish to speak, and remember to switch them off when you have finished. So on that note, good evening again. Before we make a start, I'm sure you're all saddened by the news that our Vice Chair, Kerry Watkins, passed away very suddenly at the end of June. I've had a little bit of communication with his wife. She said he was ill for a short period of time and then passed away very quickly after that. I'm afraid I don't have any more details, but I'm wondering if we could do two things, if you please. If we could just have a minute's silence, just in recognition of the work he did for us. And then I've got a letter I'd like to send, if you'll indulge me, on your behalf to his wife. So we can just have a minute's silence. Thank you, everybody, for that. And secondly, I've taken the liberty, and I hope you don't mind, of a little letter to his wife, and it basically says, "Dear Andrea, at tonight's standing committee, we held a minute's silence as a mark of respect for Kerry and his work he has done while being on that committee. Kerry always played an active part in the meetings and was great support to me in his role as a vice chair. I've been asked by all the members of the committee and the council staff who worked with him to pass on their sincere condolences for the sudden loss of Kerry to both you and your family. With deepest sympathy, Andrew, Chair of Standards Committee." So unless anyone has got any real objections, I'll ask to that to be sent out on everyone's behalf. Thank you. We'll now revert back to the agenda. I've got no other announcements apart from the first one that came along. I did hear Leanne say that we were quorums. Any apologies, Francis? No. Oh, sorry.
No apologies, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Any declaration of interests? Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting, pages 3 to 6. First of all, for accuracy, so page 3, page 4, and page 5, 6 being the blank page on that one. And for matters arising, and I will say there is an item on matters arising from this report later on, but I've asked Leanne if she'll deal with it at this moment in time as we go through. So any matters arising, page 3, page 4, and page 5. The matter arising that we will see later on is at item 8, update on the actions following the standards hearing, but it's also at bullet point 8, part 3, part 4, to direct the Head of Democratic Services to report to the committee at its next meeting on the nature of the training which has been arranged and on Councillor Cleverly's engagement with such training. So if I can ask the answer. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So following the committee's recommendations, we made some inquiries and used the benefit of our policy and partnerships team to make sure that we were sourcing a trainer that could meet the needs that we have. So there is some excellent training that we've going on around the summer throughout Wales by a particular trainer on equalities and anti-racism. So their soonest availability is the beginning of October. And there will be 2 workshops held the first week of October. They will be face-to-face, there will be about 2.5 hours each. So all of our elected members will have the opportunity to take part in one of the workshops. We have spoken to the member herself as well, who's confirmed that she's available to attend the training.
Thank you very much. Is everyone content with that?
Committee or the head of democratic services to report back on that again.
I think that might just be a good thing, just to sign it off in its completeness then. Yeah. Thank you. Complaints, anything from yourself, man?
A few things, Chair, yeah, and I'll go through them if
please do.
Committee members could bear with me. Obviously, we've just had an update on the matters relating to Councillor Cleverly. I don't think I need to say any more about that, but the committee are aware of the facts of that and the outcome. Can everyone online hear me? Before I go on.
Yes, thanks, Mike.
Thank you. So there have been a few complaints that were referred to the Ombudsman or that have been dealt with by the Ombudsman since the committee last met. What I tend to do with these is report the ones that the Ombudsman has concluded between the current meeting and the last one. And as I say, there have been a few relating to both to members of this council and also one in relation to the member of a community council. This is an open meeting, so what I'm about to report is anonymised. It is obviously open to the committee to ask for more details. If the committee wishes to do so, we would need to go into a private session, but I'm hoping that I can give enough detail that won't be necessary, but we'll see how we get on. So the first 2 complaints, they're 2 separate complaints, but they're made by the same complainant, and they relate to the same thing, and they relate to a failure to respond to correspondence by members of this council. That was a complaint received from a member of the public. That member of the public complained that the elected members had failed to respond to the correspondence and requests for engagement in relation to matters raised with them. The Ombudsman declined to investigate these complaints, and they acknowledged that the complainant might have been frustrated by the lack of a response. But the Ombudsman also noted that there's generally no obligation on councillors to correspond or engage with constituents in any particular manner. It is up to individual councillors how they choose to engage with the public. And while a failure to respond could potentially be viewed as discourteous, the Ombudsman considered that such conduct was not sufficiently serious to indicate a breach of the Code of Conduct. The matter was characterised as relating more to the members' effectiveness in carrying out their role, which is ultimately a matter for the electorate. And so the Ombudsman declined to investigate. I'm not really sure what messages or lessons can be taken from that. We don't know a tremendous amount about the circumstances of the correspondence that was referred to the members. But in any event, it was something that the Ombudsman couldn't deal with. The next one involved a member of a community council. Involved a complaint by a member of a community council about a member of this council, and it was alleged by the member of the community council that the city councillor had made accusations against them concerning comments made to a member of the public, and that they'd used social media to undermine the work of the community council. The Ombudsman took the view that there was insufficient evidence provided to support the allegations. The complaint rather lacked detail. I saw the complaint, and it was quite difficult, to be honest, to determine any substance from it. there was no supporting evidence provided in relation to the social media allegations. And the Ombudsman emphasised that complainants must provide reasonably strong direct evidence before a formal investigation can commence. And for all of those reasons, the Ombudsman declined to investigate the complaint. And there was, you know, on that basis, and also on the basis that there was no evidence provided to suggest that there had been a breach of the Code of Conduct, so that one didn't go any further. The next complaint, again related to a member of this council and concerned alleged discourteous and intimidatory behaviour towards a member of staff. The complaint alleged that an elected member had behaved in a disrespectful and intimidatory manner towards a member of staff on 2 occasions and had disclosed confidential information. The Ombudsman did actually determine to investigate this one and did begin to carry out an investigation. And that investigation related to respect, bullying, harassment, confidentiality, or the disclosure of confidential information, and the member bringing their office into disrepute. In terms of the Ombudsman's findings, they identified conflicting accounts of the incidents. The major issue that the Ombudsman had in this one was that the key witness, who was the, I suppose would be characterised as the victim of the behaviour, didn't want to engage with the Ombudsman's investigation, and the matter was actually reported to the Ombudsman by somebody other than the recipient of the alleged behaviour. But because that key witness didn't want to engage, the Ombudsman's actions in the investigation were somewhat limited. There were no other witnesses to the conduct other than the alleged receiving party, and that was the case on both interactions. And so the Ombudsman concluded without any direct evidence it wasn't possible to establish reliably what had occurred, determine the impact of the interactions, or reach a balance finding on whether the code had been breached. As you can probably imagine, there were 2 different accounts of what had happened, and with nothing to corroborate it, the Ombudsman really didn't have anything to go on. The Ombudsman did express concern between the 2 incidents. The member concerned had been advised by me as the monitoring officer to desist from what he was doing. That notwithstanding, he subsequently approached the individual again to discuss the matter. Although again, the Ombudsman was still limited in terms of what they could do, because they couldn't corroborate what had been said. So the investigation was discontinued on the grounds that it was not proportionate or in the public interest to continue in the absence of further evidence. Although the Ombudsman did recommend that the member reflect on their conduct and familiarise themselves with their obligations under the Code of Conduct. So I think what the Ombudsman's saying there is on the facts of what was stated in the complaint, there may well have been a breach, but they couldn't gather the evidence to substantiate it.
That's quite sample, isn't it? Yeah, I think it is. You know, great. I've been elected member for 40 years, and I hope that you know, I've always been responsible and respected people. I just find that's sad. You know, some members are acting that.
It's frustrating as the monitoring officer when you advise a member not to do something and they do the exact opposite. And the Ombudsman did flag their concerns in that regard. You know, I'm not in the habit of telling members not to do things. You give advice where a member is, in my opinion, clearly coming into conflict with the Code of Conduct, and yeah, it's regrettable that advice wasn't taken on board. But that's as far as that one went. The final one I have to report relates to a member of a community council, and it was a complaint against it. The member in question was no longer a member of the community council at the time that the complaint was made and dealt with. They resigned their position by that point. But it was alleged there were failures relating to financial governance, including that the member had withheld financial information, that they had created difficulties around the signatories to bank accounts, that they made unauthorised payments on behalf of the community council, that they didn't properly use council resources, and allegedly made inappropriate financial claims as well. And the Ombudsman found evidence suggesting serious failures in financial governance at that community council. The evidence demonstrated that payments have been authorised and made without appropriate council approval, and that the handling of certain financial matters had contributed to significant concern within the community. The investigation concluded that the conduct was suggestive of breaches relating to the use of council resources and conduct capable of bringing the authority into disrepute. However, the Ombudsman also noted that police inquiries had resulted in no further action. Audit Wales had investigated the matter. They'd identified concerns, but they didn't issue a public interest report. The council had regained control of its finances and was not experiencing continuing issues linked to the former member's conduct. And the individual concerned had resigned from office and had indicated no intention of returning. The Ombudsman therefore took the view that no further action was proportionate in the circumstances, with the member not being a member of that community council anymore, to quite a significant degree, because if that member had appeared in front of the Standards Committee, the only sanction available would have been a censure, because they were no longer a member. They did say that had the individual remained in office, a referral to the Standards Committee would likely have occurred. And they also said that the complaint outcome will remain on record for consideration should that individual decide to return to public office. So I think, in fairness on that one, the Ombudsman has done as much as they reasonably could do in the circumstances in regard to the efficient use of public resources. So quite a bit, nothing more for this committee to consider directly, but a few things going on behind the scenes, if you like, Chair.
Chair, can I just, on that one, I'm surprised that a member would have access to finance. It's probably not a good deal, but I don't know the workings of the Community Council. I'm quite surprised that certainly up here now, we wouldn't have access to the regular check or paying for something. It would be left to the officers.
I think, yeah, I mean, you've got to make sure you compare in line with like. I mean, what you have here is, 51 members who take a strategic view of things, and a huge team of officers that takes all of those executive actions. The community council is very much a hands-on place. I mean, they may, the bigger ones may have a full-time clerk. The clerk is more likely to be part-time. They are quite unlikely to have any staff other than that, and the reality is that members will be doing those things themselves. They will be signatories on bank accounts. They will be responsible for the accounting and so on. That's just how organisations of that scale work. However, that doesn't absolve them from responsibility for taking decisions properly and getting the approval of the council to do certain things, and that was what the concern of the Ombudsman and in fact, I have read the Audit Wales report. That was Audit Wales' concern as well. It's worth noting, as the Ombudsman says, that council has regained some control, and without going into anything confidential in an open session, I do happen to know that community council is in a far better place than it was 18 months ago. So, I think that situation is not an ongoing problem, if you like. It's a reflection of an issue that took place.
The Act is usually the financial officer.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was just surprised to remember that.
The accounts are in public domain anyway, and they're usually published every month.
Yeah.
So someone from could look at the accounts.
Oh, absolutely.
So certainly other councillors would see that. But there may be another councillor that made the complaint.
But it's just that obviously I'm chair of a community centre, and obviously I'm trying to check, but it's not just me on my own. It's two or three of us got to sign those checks before anything's agreed. That's what always going to be sent as the time to be chaired up. And I'm just surprised that one person authorised the payment.
Well, I don't know if that was the case.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't understand that. I just don't understand that. Is that right that one person can just sign the check?
There's usually the thing is things aren't done by checks these days.
Oh, okay. No.
They're done by card. And I mean, the one we hire out of facilities, it's all done by bank transfers.
Yeah.
And there's usually two people.
Right.
Usually three people, sometimes just a chair, the vice chair, and the clerk. I've got cards where you can buy things, and also you can take payments from people for certain things.
This was one person, wasn't it? This was one person, wasn't it?
No, yes, one person, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I find that.
I think the time has gone though when you used to have two people signing the check, because I mean, you can't remember the last time you signed the check. Checks aren't used now, it's done by
I get that,
transfer.
I just find it strange that one person can do that without that. Never mind if it's a check or a bank card, whatever it is. I find it strange that one person. It's very vulnerable, I think.
Yeah, but you take it how would you operate when you want to pay something?
Well, you just get, well, I don't know, there must be ways to operate.
You can't get people together.
Okay. Yes. Thank you, gents. Councillor Harvey, I believe you've got your hand up there.
Thanks, Chair. Mike, on the first point, it said the Ombudsman doesn't actually, as a councillor, we don't actually have to answer in a set specific time. For me, that would be incredibly discourteous if a member of the public have come to a councillor, any elected member. I would have thought a reasonable 5 working days you should actually answer. So I'm quite surprised that the Ombudsman have said what he said on that one. And on the third point, I actually find that quite horrifying. I understand the Ombudsman's problem, because if the witness isn't going to come forward, then you are fighting a losing battle. But can I just ask, that was about a member of staff. Are the staff okay, and have they been looked after?
Yeah, if I could take those in order, Councillor Harvey. I mean, just on the point about the correspondence first, what the Ombudsman said is that there is no duty on members to reply to correspondence. It's up to members how they engage with the public. Now, the theory of that is members will ultimately be judged at the ballot box, won't they? So if a member goes 5 years and never answers an email, the chances are they probably won't get elected. Re-elected is the theory. But it is worth. The Ombudsman did observe that the behaviour might be regarded as discourteous. I think that was the word used. Well, so that was noted. I think what we're talking about is there's probably best practice in terms of how to do the role as a member, and there's all sorts of good and bad practice within that. And then we're talking about the breach of the code of conduct. So, you know, there might be, if you think, you know, sort of here we've got a range of things which aren't ideal, and then over here you've got the line that you cross to breach the code of conduct. I think what the Ombudsman's not saying is that it's necessarily okay not to respond to correspondence. I think, you know, that they're not saying that. I think they're just saying, well, you know, that's the line for a breach of a code of conduct, but something short might not be ideal. With regard to what you said on the third one, the member of staff was looked after. I mean, it was actually their manager that raised the complaint with the Ombudsman. So support was provided and concern was raised by the managers in the service concerned, and that manager was so concerned that they decided to raise it with the Ombudsman. So in with that, they would have been supporting the member of staff. So
good.
Yeah, that was handled as well. Good.
Well, it's good to hear, because harassment and bullying in the workplace is absolutely zero tolerance, and so it should be. I mean, all the officers come to work. We all may get frustrated with each other, but they come to work to do a job. They don't come to work for an elected member to throw abuse and harassment at them. That is completely out of line. So I'm just glad to hear that the member of staff was looked after. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, supporting absolutely what Councillor Harvey just said. Yeah, that third one is quite disturbing, really. And there's a real sort of potential power imbalance there as well. The member of staff should feel comfortable working in that environment. I'm so glad they're getting support. Just on the both the first and the fourth one. The first one, I can see why the Ombudsman didn't see the need to intervene in terms of standard, but it is unfortunate because although it reflects on the councillor and there is the ballot box, it has the capacity to reflect on the performance of the council as well, which isn't good. So yeah, it's a shame. On the fourth one, in terms of the Community Council, glad to hear that will remain on record, because the last thing you want is sort of things that are untidy and potentially somebody getting away, not unchecked but unremarked, in terms of something untoward happening as well. So although it's a tidy ending, it's important that it doesn't go unnoticed and unrecorded.
I'm glad that you made that remark, because we have had cases in the past where people have been investigated by the Ombudsman and they just resigned. And we've got serious cases like misconduct, and it just hasn't gone any further. I feel that they could then rejoin the council at a later date, now without any blanch on their character. I think it's good that the Ombudsman stated that should they want to rejoin the council, that this could be brought up against them.
I think it was as much as the Ombudsman could have done in the circumstances. I mean, the Ombudsman can investigate cases after a member has resigned. It's just often not proportionate to do so. Just going back to your point about performance, Dr. Worthington. I think, obviously, what I would say, because this meeting is being broadcast publicly, if a member of the public feels that they're not getting a response from an elected member, then they can refer that into the council's complaints procedure, and once it is referred into those documented procedures that we have as a council, there are standard response times, and the council is obliged to provide responses. So there are other mechanisms open to members of the public who feel that they're not getting the responses they're seeking from elected members.
Mike, not to labour the point, but just on this, could we have something put in when we all get elected year on year or every term, whatever? Could there be something put into the code of conduct that tells councillors they have a 5 working day policy, that they do respond to their residents? Because I agree with what the gentleman said. This is a bad reflection on Newport Council as a whole, because they see us as council staff, and that is appalling. It can have an opposite effect. I'll answer my emails pretty much straight away when they come through, but I'll also answer on a weekend, which is not always a healthy thing to do. We're supposed to have time off, but we don't. As councillors, we answer constantly. So maybe if we go through 10 services or whatever, and we have that put in place, that every elected member has a 5 working day turnaround to answer their constituents.
I think that's something we could certainly look at, and it's something I'd like to explore with you and other members outside of this. I mean, I think there's a few things to consider in terms of that, whether it's something that we put into the code of conduct, or whether it's something that should be guidance. I think there's possibly a role for group leaders within that as well. Group leaders will, their members are responding to correspondence, because obviously it has the potential to have implications in terms of perception, doesn't it? So absolutely, Councillor Harvey. I think it's something we should explore, and you know, there is a review of the constitution scheduled. We're looking at the council's participation strategy as well, and there are, you know, the Democratic Services Committee. There are forums where this can be discussed and explored, and yes, it's absolutely something that can be looked at.
That's the issue, man. You acknowledge it. I understand what comes to that. You say you acknowledge that you haven't received it, but I can tell you how you won't go and answer with it, please.
I think we have to accept as well that we are seeing a rise in vexatious complainants, and I think now more than ever members are on the front line of some very difficult, you know, not universally, it's a very, very small minority of the public, but I think we are seeing an increase in vexatious complaints and very, very difficult things coming to members. So we also need to make sure that we don't put members in an intolerable position with unforeseen consequences. So yeah, it needs looking at, but in the right way, and to make sure that we don't inadvertently create any difficulties for elected members is what I want to observe.
The answer is no, was what, and then
and I think it's important to add on this that we don't know what the subject matter of the correspondence to these two members was either.
No. Take that on board. Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Matt. No further matters on this. We'll move on to item 7 on the agenda, which is the annual Standards Committee report to the full council. Two parts to this. I suppose the briefing part is page 7, that sets out the reason for it and the usual risk assessments and all the other bits. And then obviously page 13 is the actual report. I'm sure, I don't think there's anybody here, and I'll speak about new people shortly, but several years ago, this report was always taken to the council by Councillor Hurain. Yeah, we're always taken to the full council by Councillor Hurain. But we decided we wanted to improve our profile and really get out there and say, you know, we are a standards committee. And for the last couple of years, I've had the pleasure and the privilege of taking it to the standards committee. Obviously, this one will go by either the next chair or the vice chair, or whatever you decide. It's not an onerous task. There are plenty of people there from Democratic Services to support you. Generally, the report is accepted, it's been read, and you may get 1 or 2 questions about it, but nothing that, as a standards committee member, you won't be able to answer from there. So still aside to that. Has everyone had a chance to have a look at this and sort of had any comments on it before we move forward? So page 13 is really where it kicks off.
Can I just say, I think what you're saying in the beginning, I think is right. I think it's most welcome that the chair comes to the meeting, because in fairness to Councillor Hurain, he couldn't answer a question on standards, could he?
I think I don't know why it was done as customer practice in the past, and then, you know, we just said let's try it differently, which was great.
I think it's a useful statement about autonomy and independence as well. Yeah, absolutely.
So anyone, any comments or any issues or anything they wish to raise now with this before we sign it off?
I think it's really good.
Yeah.
Happy with it, thanks.
Yeah, again,
really good.
Leanne and her team have done a lot to bring all this together. Yeah, when you look at it, you think, gosh, should we really do that? You know, did some meetings there, all the stuff that's gone on with it. So thank you, Leanne. If you'd like to add back to your team as well, that would be absolutely great for that. And good luck when it gets presented to the council later on in the year.
When I read through it, I thought, actually, we've covered quite a lot of ground this year. And, you know, the involvement of the respective heads of the parties as party groups has been really good as well. I think that's a significant tick in the box. But no, I thought it was a good document, really happy.
Thank you. Obviously, we covered item 8 of the agenda. Leanne covered that for us earlier on. I'm just going to slip in there that piece of paper that she gave me earlier on as well. And that's about 2 new Standards Committee members who will be joining you. This has been to the full council. So you're going to be having a gentleman by the name of Mr. Martin Veal and Mr. Lee Cummings. So those two gentlemen will be joining you at your next meeting, and they'll be replacing myself and the late Kerry Watkins on there. The process of succession for myself and Kerry was put in place before he passed on. So this was just a natural moving on of the churn of the committee. So it wasn't anything in relation to anything that we knew about him at the time from there. Leanne, anything to say about it? Or?
No, the only thing I was going to ask is if the committee would like to take a similar approach as we did with our most recent previous joiner, was to have a bit of a informal session before the next meeting, where there's a chance to meet the new lay members before the meeting commences.
And looking at that, without trying to steal Leanne's thunder, you've got that for sometime September. There's no date on this one.
The 24th September is the next meeting.
So potentially the 24th of September and the standards committee for October. You got here? Yeah, you got October here.
Would we be voting on the chair then at that particular meeting? So it's good to have that pre.
Yeah, I think that's been included for that agenda, so that there was the wider cohort of the group that would be going forward. We'd also be looking at the forward work plan for the remainder of the year as well.
I think just, if I may, I think with regard to the election of a chair and vice chair, it will be for the committee to do that. It might be prudent for Leanne and I to send some information around to the lay members regarding that process and perhaps what's involved with the role, so that anybody who is interested in putting their name forward for that can perhaps consider that before the evening. I think we need to have a conversation about that.
Yeah, because it's a very important role. Suddenly, we've got a lot of new people that suddenly voted for a chair, etc. I think the pre-meeting might be quite good in September.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'm glad that Mike mentioned sort of what the role entails, because item 9 on the agenda is the National Standards Committee Forum feedback. Now, you will have had the notes from this, and basically what happens is all the chairs of Standards Committee throughout Wales, plus a couple of other sort of bodies, Fire Service, National Parks, the various sort of bodies you perhaps know what's their interest in this. The chairs get together, they've got a national secretary, and they elect a national chair. And quite simply, the meetings last 2.5 hours at the max, discuss issues that potentially each council may be having, although without any detail. Mike, or one of his colleagues, generally attends in the sort of professional capacity. I think he's a colleague from Cardiff who's been to the last few.
Yes, a selection of monitoring officers from around Wales.
To go. It's a really interesting forum, as you have seen in the minutes. I think for me, what I got out of it was to see that we were not alone as a standards committee, and also that it was very handy to have the Ombudsman there, and she would come along and talk about things that had happened. There were obviously no names and breaking everything down to too much detail, so you could identify things, but various issues that she was potentially having and how that could come back to National Standards Committee or to local council committees, standards committees. So the notes went out. They are not formal minutes, and one of the things that it was decided, because when the committee was constituted, there was no formal legislation, no formal power for this committee. And people were saying, oh, we need minutes, we need this. But actually, it's a group of standards chairs and others who get together to discuss some issues. It doesn't have any legislative teeth. And so it was felt that these verbatim meeting minutes were not required, and they're very sort of lax, and obviously lax is not the right word to use. They're very relaxed in relation to what minutes potentially be, because they're not designed as minutes, more of notes of what went on at the last meeting. The way the committee was constituted originally, Karen, who is the secretary, used to send them directly to me and all the other chairs of standards committees. I would then forward them on to Emily. What I've asked him to do, and copied Democratic Services into it, is any future invites will go to the Democratic Services mailbox, and then Leanne and her team will be responsible either for giving that, sending that to the chair, or whoever's going to go on behalf of the chair on that occasion. So hopefully, if the process works, it should go to you, yourself, Leanne, and your colleagues from then onwards. So just something to keep your eye out and to obviously to look at for the future from there.
Just to say, Chair, I thought the notes actually from the form were really helpful. Yeah, it's nice to have.
It is nice to have. I think the biggest issue was there's no funding available to it, so the clerk was having to do it very much on council time.
Yeah.
Although a lot of the chairs there were volunteers, there was still some payment being made, and consequently, people like Mike and his colleagues' time was being taken out of their normal working day. I said it was only a couple of hours, but it's still all added together. I'm glad you found some sort of use in them from there.
It's kind of encouraging to see that the caseload remains by and large low, which is good.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, everybody. Item 10 on the agenda, date of the next meeting, and that's for Thursday, the 15th of October, 2026 at 5:30 p.m. And if there's going to be any changes to that, I'm sure Leanne and Emily will let you know about it going forward. Yeah, so on that agenda, there isn't any other business from myself. Obviously, Mike wants to say a few words now, so over to you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but as on behalf of all of the officers involved with this committee, Leanne and me in Democratic Services, I just wanted to record our thanks to you, Chair, for all that you've done. You've been a lay member of the council now for quite a number of years. Been involved with the Standards Committee for all of that time, latterly as the Chair. You've had great relationships with officers. We've enjoyed working with you. It's always been a really positive relationship. You've been committed to the committee and everything it does in terms of attending the Standards Forum and coming along to full council to present the annual reports. And certainly as far as the officers are concerned, you will be missed, and I thought it would be appropriate on behalf of all of the officers just to record that, and obviously as officers as well. I would prefer to be thanking Kerry for all that he'd done for this committee, because he did do a tremendous amount, and it's very sad that instead on behalf of all of the officers, we record our condolences to his family on what was a very, very sad passing. So that was what I wanted to say, Chair. But yeah, just to go back and thank you for everything that you've done over the last few years.
Thank you very much. That's much appreciated, and I must admit, Councillor Harvey, I also find it difficult how people can not get on with officers. I've had absolutely no issues at all. Even today, a quick email to Emily saying, "Can you give me a quick ring, please? I need to speak." And there's the phone. So thank you, Leanne, for your team. Thank you, Mike, for all your support. It's been great. Thank you, Emily. Taylor's down there. Thank you very much indeed. And I wish the committee best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're a professional chair, and you're not just a chair.